Okay, in this video we're going to do a simple Blender game. Okay, first of all we're going to open Blender, make sure that we have the command line. So if we're on a Mac and we do this, and that opens it from a terminal. If you're on Windows, there will be an option. You just search for open terminal. There's a window and there's a show terminal screen or something like that. And we'll need that in not yet, but this will print error messages if there's errors. Alright, so here's the default view that's set up for Blender Render for making movies. Right, instead of making a movie, we're going to make a game. We'll switch to Blender Game. Now with Blender Game, you can press P for play, and that's the game so far. There's keys don't do anything, mouse doesn't do anything, there's just this block. Alright, so first thing is the block. If we look at the properties over here, when you go into the game, there's an extra thing over here in the properties. So if you have one of your areas and you have it on properties, you have the world, you have all these different things. Where is the block and how is it rotated? It's at the origin, and if we move it around, it moves, or we can just put it at 0 here. Okay, down at the end we have physics, and if you put this on rigid body or dynamic, then it'll apply physics. So let's see what happens. It falls. Okay, so what it's basically doing is it'll apply just regular laws of physics, including gravity, which points down. Okay, so that'll be true if you do dynamic or rigid body, either one. So far, it'll look the same. And escape to close that. Static means it doesn't move. Laws of physics don't apply to it. All right, so if we want to have the laws of physics applied, then you need to have something like a ground, and you can insert, the usual thing is to insert a plane. So insert a mesh plane. There it is. And S for scale. So if you have it selected, type S. You can make this bigger. You could also go into the properties and set the scale to be something really large. And we want to make our object here so it is not inside of the plane. Now if we play the game, it falls onto the plane. All right, let's make the plane so that it is some kind of color. Right click, material, and we can make it some color, maybe green. Okay, so now if we play, let's just see. Okay, we need our lighting set up appropriately. Here's our lamp, and let's go ahead and that was somewhere over here. and we're looking at the scene from somewhere over here, and if we just play, depends on where the lamp is. As to whether we get any color off the plane or not. So if you look at this, the black face of the cube there, the reason is because the light goes this way. It doesn't get to the back. If we want to see the back, then one thing we can do, so let's do smooth. It's always good to, if you're in the, let's see, this part here is the tools. That maybe that looks better, but you can go into cube. Right now it's this kind of a color. The diffuse is the main color, the specular is the little reflection there. Shading, fine. Let's go into the world. Go ahead and leave that alone. We will just leave this the way it is. Okay. So we have our cube falling onto a plane. Now if we want the cube to move, a couple different ways to do this. We're in Blender Game, and let's click over here onto Game Logic Display, so that'll the thing that we want here is this logic editor. Okay, so we still have our 3D display here, just like before. Now we have our logic editor. If we want this to move around, then we need to do something with the keys. So there's two different ways to do this. One is right here. We add a keyboard sensor. And say if we press the up key, then what we want to happen is movement. So motion, and this motion here will have location changed by, say, let's see, we'll just put something here, -1 in the X direction. I'm looking at it right now. This is positive X, -1 will go this way. That's the up arrow. Now for that to happen, you have to connect it through a, this is controller, really what that is logic. So it doesn't really matter what we put here. Connect this and this. Okay, so what this means is when up arrow is pressed, so this action will happen as long as this thing is true, and this thing is true, it's an AND, but it only has one input when the up arrow is pressed. Let's try that to make sure it works. There it goes. Down arrow, we could add another one here to do the down arrow. Okay. The other way that we can do this is by putting some text in here. This is the text editor, and we can put in a Python code. So if I click on Templates, Python, Game Logic Simple, that adds in some simple game logic. I'll save this as, okay, so I'm going to save the game. Game. And I'll call this here This is going to be the code for the cube. It's traditional to call that player, so I'll call that player because I'm selected on the cube. If I select on the plane, it would have its own keyboard things. Alright, so for this one we've got that. I could run it again. Alright. Now I'll show you a tutorial that's pretty good that you can also look at. Actually, let's go to the Python reference. Game engine. So this is going to be references for the everything that we're going to use. This is BGE here. Let's just, well, actually, rather than show you this, I'll say there's just a link I want to show you in here at the bottom. Here's a tutorial that shows you how to use the Python scripting. Alright, I'm just going to do things in here right now. Alright, so I want to add another keyboard sensor for the down arrow. And it'll be very much like this, motion. I'll change, let's see, I was on the x-axis, and now for the down arrow I'll do a change by 1. Add another AND controller. Go ahead and add a left arrow. And let's see, left in here, this is the Y direction. Left would be minus on the Y, the way that we have the camera view right now. And the right arrow. That's a positive on the Y. Let's go ahead and do that. Okay, up, back, left, right. And if you hold it down, it goes. All right. Let's do something else. Let's say that we want to build. So if we want to build, then we're going to add in new objects. And let me just pause for a second. Alright, I think I know what we want to do here. So I'm going to make it so that when we press enter, something will happen. Add a keyboard, enter, and call it and. Now I want to do some action, and the action I want to do is add another cube. So I have the type of action here is object. See, edit object, and you can have add object. So I'm going to add an object, but I need to make the object that I want to add. So I'm going to go and click over here. This here are different layers, and right now I'm just looking at one. Okay, so I'm going to, in another layer, I'm going to add another whatever I want to bring in. And I'll just stick with cubes. There's a cube, and I'll make this cube, I'll call it, let me rename it here. This is dynamic cube. And that other one I'm going to call player. Alright, the dynamic cube, I want to click on the properties, and that I do have a properties window here, but I would like to have one that's bigger. I'm going to do a property windows here. Properties. Properties. Okay. Let's make this a different color. Make it, say, blue. And if you want to put some texture on it, this is the textures. You could do some built-in thing, wood. So that looks like, I don't know. Alright, and then we want to put on the physics type dynamic. Alright, back over in the other scene. Click back on the cube. The object we want to add is dynamic cube. And what location should we add it at? First, let's just try it like this. Right now it's going to add it probably at the origin. And okay, what it's actually doing is it's adding it on top of ourselves, and since we have physics turned on, it's actually making us rotate. Let's, for ourselves, the player, let's make it static. So it's not going to get twisted around. Okay. There I am. So it'll create these guys just popping out of nowhere. And if you push on them, they get pushed because physics is turned on. Isn't that fun? Alright. Maybe we want to make it so that the cube does not get created right on top of ourselves. If we want to do that, then there's various ways to do it. One of them is to add, well, we know that the cube is going to be a certain amount. Say we want to put it in this direction, like right in front, or maybe right behind. So we'll put it here at, true, try putting it there like that. Okay, so that didn't work. Let's try this, maybe 5. Back to 0. Oh, we'll just leave that alone. Right now this guy's kind of floating up in the air. Let's put him down. So the initial location, let's put him at 0, 0. 0 would put the center on the plane. So instead of the center being on the plane, let's put it right on top of the plane. And maybe we want to have 2 different kinds of cubes. Maybe we want to make one that's static that we can bring in some other way. So go over here and I'll make another cube. I'll make this one called static cube. We'll make it red. Okay, so red cubes are static. And I want to just make sure it says static over here. Okay. Then if I go back over to my layer that I'm looking at, select the cube, let's give another key to do adding the static cube. Okay. So what do we want to press? Tab. Alright, if we press tab, then we'll add a static cube. So here we're going to do object, edit object, add object, static cube. All right. Okay, so now it doesn't, if you wanted to, you could make a little arena. And then place my dynamic cube in here, and then watch it go. Let's see. So they don't just fly everywhere because they're sort of enclosed here. Okay. Like a ping pong game or something. Let's see, is there anything else I want to show?